Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Main Idea podcast, where today I have the pleasure of sitting down with David Zavik. Listen up for a second, real quick. I see the numbers, how many people are listening to the show, and there's 86 five-star reviews on Spotify. So I know that there's a ton of people that are listening to the show every week that haven't clicked that 5-star button. So please take 30 seconds, go on to Spotify, click the little drop-down menu, select 5 stars, give us a 5-star review. It helps so much with organic show growth and discovery, which is super important to me because that's how I want this show to continue to grow. The other way that you can support it is by simply sharing it with someone who loves jiu-jitsu, strength training, and human performance. David Zavik is the CEO of Immuno Labs, a federally licensed independent laboratory in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that specializes in food sensitivity and food allergy testing. They've been in business for over 46 years and have helped over 500,000 patients in 88 plus countries. They've also worked alongside the Cancer Treatment Centers of America and Mark Hyman's Ultra Wellness Clinic. I personally have done the blood test to get the food sensitivities and implemented it into my personal life for digestive issue reasons. And I'm stoked. I've been excited to bring this conversation to life because I think it will answer a lot of questions around when, where, and why this kind of stuff can be useful. So I hope that you enjoy this episode. To support it, check out the sponsors in the show notes. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, David Zavik. David, thank you so much for joining me today. We've been wanting to get this conversation going for a long time, but we needed a little bit of a test run here where I could actually utilize the offering that your company has and go through a little bit of the experience myself, which I'm actually pretty stoked to talk about because I think it's something that's going to resonate a lot with the listeners, but we can kind of ping pong that off of your experience as a business person and running this business and how it could impact, people all over the world, whether they're athletes or not. So aside from the intro that will precede you, maybe you can open up a little bit with what it is that you do at Immuno Labs, how you came into that line of work, and then ultimately the process that you guys take people through when they reach out for your services.
Yeah, absolutely. So to give a little bit of background, I've been involved in this business essentially my entire life. My father created this from absolutely nothing. To make I guess a long story medium long, he wasn't doing really well in school when he was much younger, which took him down this very different path that led towards transcendental meditation that took him towards being the office manager of a medical spa or a medical establishment down in the Bahamas. And while he was there as the office manager and seeing what products will come in and which ones they're not going to move forward with, one of the things that came through was this idea of testing someone for various food to find out how it could relate to their health and what's going on. And there's a few other ideas that came along. So once he left that health clinic down there, and they're doing some wild stuff. They're doing like stem cells before that was, I think, even called stem cells, using like some kind of a sheep embryo. It was just wild, right? I mean, this was a long time ago. I'm not even sure what year that was, but I mean, this would probably be like maybe in the 50s or 60s, something like that, 60s or 70s. So yeah, way back. And so then eventually he left that Bahamas place, went back to the continental U.S., and then he put a couple ideas in the fire. One of them was what we were still doing, which is food sensitivity testing. And initially for him, it really rang true because when he was younger and in college, he had a lot of different digestive health issues. So while in college, he got exposed to a lot of different diets that were out there, like the macrobiotic diet, the vegan diet, just all kinds of different diets. And as he tried different ones, he realized he started feeling differently and better on some, not on others. And he had friends that kind of had that same experience. So then fast forward to him leaving that clinic, starting his own business, and they started seeing that there truly is a connection between what we eat and how we feel. And essentially that's what our laboratory does. We help draw that connection for people. I'm sure, Abe, you have probably a plethora, probably every single one of your clients that will come in saying, oh, I'm on this diet, or I like eating this, or have you heard of X, Y, and Z celebrities diet, or talk about this and that, and how can I lose 20 pounds like they did on this diet? And that's now becoming a bit of the issue, is that we have such an abundance of information, especially when it comes to diets. I think the last time I checked on Amazon, there's about, I think it's like 300,000 books in the category of diet and fitness, right? Or sorry, diet
Yeah.
and nutrition. So it's a lot, and you could literally take generations of lifetimes to try to figure out and test every single one of those diets to see which one would work well for you, like which one gives you the outcome you're looking for. And that's where our testing can come in. We can help, cut through all of that noise and tell you exactly, this is the food that's causing inflammation in your body. This is the food that's, causing unnecessary, immunological burden to your body. And then by eliminating those foods out of your diet, you can start feeling better. And then with that comes, improvement of various symptoms. So that's kind of I guess, a mild version of a very long story of how we got started. So here we are, 46 years later. I've retired my parents out of the company, and now my wife and I run Immuno Laboratories.
So if someone is hearing this and they're like, oh well, I've tried a lot of diets before. I've had mixed feelings. Maybe I had a hard time sticking with
Mm-hmm.
some. That's a challenge a lot of people face. Maybe even they're really into it and they're super committed in the short term, and then life happens and they fall away from it. And they go, okay, you know what? I think I want to do this. What can they expect? What's like the process that someone's going to go through when they reach out to your company, or they get to work with some of your employees and start to go down this road of actually taking this from an individualist approach of how does my actual body react to food, not what should I do because my friend's doing it, or because I got
Yeah.
fed this ad, or because that celebrity had XYZ results, which they were probably on Ozempic. And how do they, what can they expect to experience with you guys?
Yeah. I think, I remember a while back we were doing rebranding of the company. We were trying to figure out, what is it that we actually, delivered. I mean, of course, it's, lab results and whatnot, but what's that, end goal that someone actually gets? Like, what's that, fulfillment that someone has? And that's when we realized it really just comes down to empowerment. We're providing people information to help them draw that conclusion, draw that link between what they eat and how they feel. So for the individual that's out there going, man, I've tried so many diets, I don't care, or how's this going to actually work for me? Well, the difference is that you take all those different diets, right? All those 300,000, different diet books out there. Every single one of them are missing one thing: you. None of them are
Right.
taking into account what's going on in your body. None of them are taking into account, your history and, everything that you've experienced, or the trends of how you eat, or, what you have for breakfast. None of them are taking any of that into account. They're just giving you general advice. And, a lot of the advice can be good. If you want to lose weight, then yes, you need to eat less calories and, things like that. But none of them are really personalizing it to you. And that's what we can really help someone do, especially for the people that are really, having a challenge, either losing weight or losing the weight and, feeling good. That's where,
Right.
we can really help a lot, because sure, you can, um, I guess I think of it in a couple of different ways. So first off, yes, you can be a vegan and you can eat a bunch of crap. Sugar is still considered to be vegan, but if your diet only consists of sugar and bread, that's not good, right? That's not healthy. So you will check the box, you will be vegan, and you will more than likely have some serious health issues and not feel good, right? We call that, I guess, a bad vegan, or an unhealthy vegan, right? So same can be true with, any diet that you want to be on. Sure, you can, check the box. You were on a diet. You were eating a certain way. You hit the right definition of what a diet is. But at the end of that, diet journey of that 90 days, of that 6 months, of that year, you may realize, yeah, I lost the weight, but now I have, irritable bowel syndrome. Now I'm feeling really gassy. Now I feel bloated all the time. Now I just don't feel good. Like, maybe I got my initial goal, but I don't feel well. So that's where, our testing can kind of help figure out what's going on in that connection between what you're eating and how you're actually feeling, so we can get you to the true goal that you want, which I'd say is to be, healthy and vibrant, to and achieve whatever secondary goal you have of losing weight or resolving a certain issue.
Well, I'll double down on the question a little bit to get more of the framework, and then I think maybe I'll share a little bit of my experience too,
Yeah,
because I can open up on it. But maybe you can walk me through just the actual customer experience. Like,
gotcha.
they call Immuno
Yeah, yeah,
Labs and they say, "Hey, I poop my pants all the time. Like, help
yeah.
me." What are their next steps, and what's kind of the turnaround between that phone call or that outreach email, whatever, and their first action step into kind of like moving this in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. So the basic process is someone will reach out to us, right? I'm not feeling well. I want to have an improvement in my health. So the first thing we're going to do is called a symptom checklist. We want to understand what symptoms the individual is having because they may be using the wrong term for what they want, right? They may walk in saying,
Right.
"Oh, I really want a sweatshirt," but the reality is they're heading to the Bahamas and they really need a t-shirt, right? A sweatshirt's not going to be the right thing for them. So that's what the symptom checklist does. It helps us understand what chronic issues this individual is experiencing so we can better map that to the various testing that we have to give them the right insight. So one example of that is someone could say, "Hey, I think I have an allergy to X, Y, and Z." Well, we want to ask a couple more questions to find out, is this an environmental allergen? Is this a food related allergy? Or is this a delayed food sensitivity? Which all of these would be different types of tests. So that would
Gotcha.
be the first thing, is to just find out, truly understand what's going on with the individual. And from there, provide some recommendations and saying, okay, based on what you're telling us, based on what your symptoms are and the goals that you're trying to accomplish, this is the testing that we would recommend. Once we have an
Right.
agreement with the individual that, yeah, you're right, that is the testing I want, and yes, I'd like to move forward, then we would send a collection kit to them. We have two different collection kits, and depending on the type of testing that they would need, it would either be a finger stick collection where they would just have a simple little lancet like you would with, say, blood glucose or any other little finger prick. You just prick your finger, you drop a couple drops of blood. That specimen comes back to our laboratory. We'll have results back to the individual in 48 to 72 hours once we've received the specimen. Test
Wow.
results will be very straightforward. Here are your reactive foods. Here are your non-reactive foods for what we tested you on. And then the next page is a 4-day rotation diet. So the person knows exactly what I can eat, on what days I can eat these foods. We just really want to make it easy for someone to implement that. The other type of collection method we have is called a venipuncture. That's the very standard draw from the vein in the arm,
Yep.
and you have a licensed professional help you with that, a phlebotomist. They could come to your house, your work, or you could go to a brick and mortar location. They would draw your blood, and even though the finger prick collection method is different, we're still testing the same thing, which is blood serum. And then the turnaround time is the same, results are the same. It's just whatever's more convenient. For example, when I tested my kids, who at the time, I'm trying to think if they're 6 and 4 or 5 and 3, but somewhere around then, we did finger prick because we could just do it at the house. It was very easy to talk to them about it, collect it right there instead of trying to have them go to a phlebotomist and have a needle in their arm. As a parent, that I'd be a little concerned about that. It's like, oh man, not my baby. And then also for people out there, some are very scared of needles. Others prefer to have someone a professional do it because they're scared they'll mess up the
Yep.
finger prick. So we offer a lot of different ways that someone can do it, but it's very straightforward. The real kind of magic, so to say, happens in the laboratory, and that's true of essentially all laboratory tests. There's not much insight or wild stuff that happens in the specimen collection. It's all once the
Right.
laboratory receives your specimen.
Which is a great segue to the next spot, because in this day and age of ultimate trust in every single business and entity, what are you guys doing to protect people's privacy? Because this is so. I will again share kind of my experience once we get through this part of it, but one kind of hurdle is that you are sending your blood, your DNA, and all your information just into the mail, which, having done this and knowing you, and also knowing that the business is very legitimate, right? This is totally a fine process. The risk is essentially zero. But that action of doing that can be intimidating, because people's history or experience with doing this is you're inside the walls of a hospital, everyone's got their lab coats on, the doctors come, they do everything professionally, they walk into the other room, and you kind of never experience the process. So what is in place to make sure, like, hey, yes, you are sending your blood to these labs in Florida, you don't live there, are they going to leak your DNA information and sell your medical history to people? What do you guys have in place legally, professionally, that makes sure that people that are going to do business with you and utilize your services are truly protected to the nth degree when they send in their blood samples?
Yeah. I mean, first, all laboratories, or at least all legitimate registered laboratories, have to abide by various federal laws and state laws. So, of course, we have to abide by those. That governing body is called CLIA, and I can't remember if the FDA took this over or not. But if the FDA did not take it over, then it's under something called CMS. But it's a larger governing body. They come and inspect us quite regularly.
Mhm.
I think we know what year they're coming, and we don't know when they're going to come until I think like a couple days before, just to help us get the documents ready for them. So when they come in, they can just have everything there for them. Um,
Yep.
and even then, I don't think we know the day. I think they just tell us like this week we're going to be there, so like be ready and like how will I want the documents there, this certain way. But the point is, they're essentially trying to catch us with our pants down, so to say, to make sure that everything's going the way it should be.
Right.
Regarding specimens and safety, there there's not really a lot that someone could do with your specimen if it got into the wrong hands, so to say. It would actually more so be a concern for, say, the porch pirate that wanted to grab a vial of blood, because if the person had a infectious disease, then that'd be really bad for them. So there's
Right.
not much in that process. But yes, once we have your specimen, yeah, if we were doing some craziness to it, then I could see how that could be concerning. But there are a lot of checks and balances that come into place to protect the consumer, especially in America. Like if you're testing in America, there are a lot of rules in
Stringent.
place that would be an issue if we were trying to sell their information. With that being said, you do have to see what the company is doing with your information. I think it was 23andMe that had some big issue with data leaking, or even sharing information. I think with insurance companies or something. So it all depends, and oftentimes that is unfortunately something you may be signing off on when you're reading through, or maybe not reading through, the terms and conditions of the purchase that you made. But for our laboratory, I mean, we're just doing our testing straightforward. I think I even mentioned it too. We have been approached by several people because IgE, allergy reactions, can be quite lucrative. So there are companies that would like that type of serum to run various research and
Wow.
do certain things. And that was just a business decision that we made to not sell people's serum after its use. So what we do is we do collect your serum, your specimen, we test for it, we hold it for a period of time, mainly because once we present the results to you, depending on what your results say. So, for example, we test you on our food sensitivity test called a blood print. If you come up reactive to a gluten-containing grain, and you go, wait a minute, I would like to also, look further into that. Like, do I have celiacs? Do I need to avoid all gluten? Do I have an issue with that? Well, we can just reanalyze your specimen once we have your approval. So instead of
Nice.
having you collect a new specimen, ship it back to us and have those delays, we can send you the results. We'll say, hey, based on what we saw in this, we would recommend doing this additional testing if you'd like. And then you'd be able to say, yeah, great, let's do that. And then we can just reanalyze it without having to redraw it. And it's been, staying in the freezer. So it's, a completely fine specimen. There's no degradation in it.
Yeah. So the whole process I thought was fairly seamless. I mean, I had never done a mail-in blood test before. I think it's spelled out so well when you get it as to what to do. It's very easy. And I don't even personally love needles. And it was not like an issue, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
pinprick is so minor. The anticipation is so much greater than the actual thing. And then it's very
Yeah.
self-explanatory. It's easy to do. You send it in. And I, I think there's an interesting thing here with food sensitivity testing, diet culture, and then just being someone who has lived a life of eating, I would say 85% healthy since I was a child, and exercising regularly, is you do develop a sense that you are healthy, right? The thing is that you can live a healthy life and have issues. You can have flare-ups, indigestion, you can have skin reactions. All these kind of things can be a product of what you would otherwise characterize as really healthy. So if you eat a fair amount of vegetables, you get whole proteins and whole foods in your diet, that doesn't guarantee that some of those aren't ideal for you. And so you can have this strange experience of, wait, I eat so healthy, I do all the right things. Why do I have stomach aches? Why do I have indigestion in the middle of training? I know I need to eat a lot of, X, Y, or Z to meet my protein requirements, my caloric demand for all the sports that I do. oh, why do I feel this way? Why am I lethargic at this time of the day? Whoa, why am I over consuming tons of caffeine to make up for energy from, all this different things that go into what actually makes us ourselves on our day-to-day basis. And one of the biggest things I think I got from doing this, it was admittedly very difficult for me because I didn't come back with a ton of results of a laundry list of things I was sensitive to. It was actually very few. It was, I could fit it in a note on my phone where I could check every day and be like, these are things I need to avoid. There were things like brewer's yeast, baker's yeast, pistachios, tomatoes, wheat. The hardest ones for me were like wheat and tomatoes.
Yeah.
And when I went, okay, I'm going to do this, I failed 4 times in a row. Basically, like I would get from Monday to
It's
Saturday,
tough.
and then
Yeah.
I would hit it, and I'd be like, bummer. And Lauren, my fiance, has done this before, and she's like, it's fine, just reset, get back at it, reset, start over, cool. But what I learned through the process of all this, despite not having 100% compliance, which I think is probably the case in most situations, is very difficult to do unless you're cooking every single meal yourself for the
Yeah.
90-day period. Uh, you just develop this sense of awareness. Like, as I said before, I'm a very mindful person when it comes to food. And I've ate thinking about performance and outcomes for pretty much my entire life. And after doing this, I just realized that I had these strange habits that I wasn't aware of, where I would be consuming these foods in excess or in bunches, or I just would lack variance. So it would be only consuming these foods, right? And they were leading directly to these issues that I was having. And it wasn't until I got this test back, I talked with your nutritionist and we kind of outlined this plan of what to do for this window, that I actually saw those dots connect for the first time. And I think that alone, no matter what you do with it, that alone is like an X factor. That makes the whole thing worth it, because you will not get that from doing the carnivore diet, becoming vegan, doing the
Yeah. No.
Mediterranean diet, doing the Whole30 diet. None of those are going to give you this super individualized data point of what you consume and how your body reacts to it. And that, I thought, was like the most beautiful part of doing the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most people just, go about their day, not thinking too much about their health from a moment to moment
Mm-hmm.
standpoint, right? You wake up, you have breakfast, you bought the organic eggs, so you're good, right? You bought the
Yeah.
organic bread, you're good, right? I mean, I feel like most people that are probably listening to this podcast, they're already quite healthy. They're doing what they feel to be as the right thing. But the challenge becomes, is it the right thing for your body? And then more importantly,
Yes.
starting to draw those conclusions where you don't wake up one day and go, oh man, I really hope I don't get, hit by the headache fairy. Instead, you have this
Right.
empowerment. That's what, I was speaking to earlier of what our lab really delivers is you have this empowerment to go, all right, today I am going to feel great because I know what I should be eating. I know what I should be avoiding. And I know that this is going to help me in my performance. As mentioned to you before, as we've worked with athletes, especially people that are very high performing, they don't really have a lot of health issues going on. They're already extremely well dialed in. But what they were able to find is that they had an improvement in energy, they had a
Mm.
reduction of water retention, and they had an improvement in sleep. So it's just all these kind of core areas that can just continue you on the right path. That's what they were able to have improvements on. I think more importantly than chasing this feeling of vibrance is really ensuring that you don't backslide. I know that's one thing I was talking with you about when you're like, oh man, I don't like have that many. Like it's not like 4th of July fireworks lighting up on my
Right.
results. And I was like, yeah, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That means that you're already doing so many things right that you just got to keep this 1%, just going the right way instead of ending up in this point where it's like, you start going the wrong way, right? So I think that's true of so many things in our life where it's not that one day we messed up. Like for example, when you're saying about how you made a mistake on eating and you ate one of your reactive
Mm-hmm.
foods, it's not like you do that one day and it's like, oh well, burn it all down. It's
Right.
done. It's over. I can never do this
Yeah.
again. It's McDonald's and cupcakes for me. Like that's all I can do. It's just it's like you're saying, it's just having that awareness and going, you know what? Now I'm seeing how this stuff sneaks in here. Like I thought, having this thing would be fine. I had no idea that they were, thickening the smoothie with, some kind of a gluten containing, item.
Right.
I didn't realize that, this meal was, throwing in tomatoes, and I just, wasn't really thinking about it. I think when it comes to tomatoes, as a quick aside, I think one of the funny stories we
Ugh,
had is
ketchup.
someone that was, really reactive to tomatoes. And, with our testing, we have a 100% money back guarantee based on someone feeling better. So, we,
Yeah.
we have that there. We tell people, hey, if you're not feeling well, let us know. We'll give you your money back. So one person came back. They're like, listen, this isn't working. It's bogus. I don't believe it. And I was like, okay, well, if you can just
Yeah.
send me just a couple days of what you're eating. So I'm just trying to see if there's something that was missed or, or not. As they sent it back, they were highly reactive to tomatoes. Okay. As they sent it back, they were consistently eating ketchup and I think like
Yeah.
even like various pasta dishes. And I was like, well, that like tomatoes in that. And they're like, oh man, like I didn't even think about it because they were just picturing like, a vine, ripe,
A
big,
tomato.
yeah, a tomato. Like they weren't thinking about it. So I think that's back to the point you're saying where it's like you start having a better awareness for like what it is you're eating, what kind of stuff is in food. And then also like you're saying, realizing the benefit of, cooking some meals yourself and prepping some stuff yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
it can be challenging, but even just starting with, breakfast and then maybe you migrate to having it be breakfast and dinner, or, maybe it ends up being, dinner and lunch because lunch becomes the leftovers from dinner, but you're just starting somewhere to have more of an awareness of what you're actually eating because it's quite fascinating when you kind of cook your own food, how quickly you start to just feel better because, I mean, one, you're eating whole food. And two, since you're the one putting the stuff in, you're probably not going to sit there and grab, 30 different ingredients and start throwing all this stuff in. Not to mention, you don't need the preservatives because you're making it right now to
Right.
eat it. So it goes from whole food that you collected to eating, that's it. And then just the general laziness that most people are going to have, they're not going to throw in, a pinch of 40 different things. It's going to be unnecessary. It's not going to make a difference in the cooking and the enjoyment of that meal.
Yeah. The food ingredient thing is another part of this that I think is really fascinating because I actually it's funny you say that about the tomatoes because my first two, I call them failures, right? Like the first two times that I lapsed out of attempting to stay within the ramifications of my food guide, it was ketchup because we went to a restaurant and I mean, dude, went to like the nth degree, right? So I got like, I think that day I had it was like a grass fed hamburger with, we took the bun off because of the sensitivity to wheat,
Yeah.
and everything was pristine. And I was eating it, and I'm looking at Lauren, and she looks at me, and she's just like smiling, and laughing because she knows how hard this is. She did this for, she had like a 6 month window where she did a diet adjustment based on sensitivity tests for some issues that she was
Mm.
having previously. And so she knows how hard it is to go through this and to stay right on the line. I remember when she was doing that. And I was like, what are you laughing at? And she looks down and she just kind of like points at the ketchup. She's like, one of your key sensitivities is tomatoes. And I was like, yeah, I don't have any tomatoes because I literally took the tomato
Yeah.
off of the burger. Right.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking, I'm like, man. But again, that wouldn't have happened if I didn't do it. And that teaches me again that like you can think that you're doing the right thing, or you think you're eating a diet or a way, or you're living a way of life that's positive for you. But then there's things that just kind of slip through. And it doesn't mean the takeaway from this is not never eat ketchup again, but it's the things that you might be sensitive to that are making you have indigestion when you get on the mat to train
Mm.
jujitsu, or you show up to striking class, or you go out for a run and you have to stop in the middle to go find a bathroom. Those moments in an active person's life are extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
And if they are happening not because of huge red flags, but because of these little things that you kind of forgot about, you grab a bag of chips and you get gluten-free ones, but then they have another thing in the seasoning that you're really
Bunch of
sensitive to.
canola oil or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, but I thought I was doing the right thing, but it's really you were, but there was one of your sensitivities in there. And so it becomes hard, but it becomes very eye-opening. And my whole thing with this, the most frustrating part with my like health and digestive system was exactly that. It was like so many times I would get to training in like the afternoon or evening. And I mean, dude, you're about to like basically fight each other. I mean, wrestle and do jujitsu. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, like do I need to go to the bathroom, or like, do I need to take 5 here?
Mm.
And that's infuriating. It is so annoying. And it's even more annoying to not know what the cause is, because you're living a healthy lifestyle, you're eating healthy foods, and yet you still have these issues. And that's why I think that this was so worth it, because it's helped that. And that was really infuriating. And now I have a little bit more pause and a little bit more understanding as to why those happen. And so I can actually see it or catch it or prevent it because of knowing these things that are specific to me. A lot of people have reached out and asked uh, why I was doing the food test, or, where do you do it? What were the results? What were the outcomes? And I've been waiting to do this episode to talk about it, because that was one of the most important ones for me. But didn't want to like reach out to someone and be like, oh, the biggest takeaway is make sure you don't eat ketchup, because that
Yeah,
might not be
that's
true for
different.
them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It might be great for them to eat ketchup, but they definitely shouldn't be eating they shouldn't have beer because they're really sensitive to brewer's yeast or something like that. And that's the only drink they drink. And they don't drink any, other alcohols because they try to stay away from them. But this one thing is just driving their indigestion. So that kind of exposure, that knowledge has been invaluable. Can you talk a little bit about the water retention and the energy? Because those are not things that I specifically was dealing with, but my knowledge of, martial arts and combat sports, those are incredibly important things. I
yeah.
mean, your energy levels and water retention and being able to regulate that when you have to make weight, cut weight, uh, stay at your fighting weight, all these kind of things are extremely important.
Yeah, a lot of times the body will retain water to help dilute, various, things that are bothering it, right? So if you are having certain kinds of inflammation going on, your body may retain or hold on to fat as well as water to kind of help deal with that stuff. Meaning, so when you get rid of that inflammation, your body goes, oh, I don't need this buffer anymore. I don't need this, dilutant to be in there. I can just let this go because it's no longer needed. So it's not like you're going to change your food and like all of a sudden you drop 10 pounds, but it will just be something
Right.
that you can start progressing towards that because your body's no longer needing to retain those various fluids. So that's, the water retention side. On the recovery side, your immune system and digestion, and actually digestion in general, is the most taxing thing that our body does, right? So I mean, that's why, even in the animal kingdom, you'll see something like an anaconda go to eat something, and if it needs to fight, it vomits that food back up because digestion takes a lot of energy. Now I realize we're not a snake; it's just an easy comparison to make. But for even our own body, we all recognize that after a meal, especially a large meal, and let's say a more unhealthy one, you feel so lethargic, right?
Oh, you're
After
done.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, I mean, I know there's tryptophan in the turkey, but even for those people that don't eat turkey on
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, just the sheer volume of food that you consume can really bring you down. I think we're even talking at one point about fasting and how after a couple of days, like your energy goes through the roof. So that's another thing that can help on the recovery side, is that when you're eating foods that are not adding this additional burden onto your body, you can start recovering faster because your body isn't having to take resources from something else it needs to do, like rebuilding your muscles, or you're doing what else it
Right.
needs. It doesn't have to take away from that. It doesn't have to put that into the immune system, into the digestion to fight this inflammation that's going on. Instead, that's no longer needed. Your body can perform more optimally. The way I relate it to kind of an easy to understand idea is, Abe, you're in incredible shape, right? You can walk a mile, no issue. I bet you can run a mile, no problem. But if I put a
Right.
200-pound backpack on you, it's going to be a lot harder, right?
That's hard.
So,
Yeah.
you can keep working to try to, get strong enough to, deal with it. And it'll probably take you a long time because that's a really heavy pack. Or I could simply take, 150 pounds off of you and you're going to go, wow, like I feel way better. And if I can get, all of that off of you, then you're going to be able to perform, beyond your wildest dreams. So that's kind of the idea behind how these inflammatory foods, and more importantly removing them, can really help with your performance. And there's been several different studies on this. One of them that was done that wasn't on our lab specifically, it wasn't a study that we conducted, but it was about collegiate athletes and their 300-meter run. What I found fascinating is that they only did this in a 2-week period. So I don't know if that's really enough to say that someone's performance would have improved or not. But their
Mm.
300-meter time did not improve. But what did was their cognitive abilities. So their ability to remember stuff, their ability on, I forgot what the test was. They're doing a certain test taking to see how much better they performed. That did significantly go up. So what I think that shows us is that if we can get these inflammatory foods out of our body, we're going to be able to operate a lot better, which will allow us to get better outcomes. I'm sure you've experienced times where you go to roll on the mat, and maybe you have some brain fog, or you just feel lethargic in general, right? You don't get as much out of it. I mean, I'm sure you continue to go through it to get as much learning as you can, but you may not retain as much because you're just kind of fatigued. You're just not feeling well, or like you're saying, you're thinking about your stomach, and man, am I going to poop here on the mat, or like what's going to happen? So you're missing a lot of the other things that are happening, a lot of the other lessons that can be taken in. So yeah, the more that we can remove distractions so that you can feel better and perform better, I mean, it's going to help you in the long run in many different ways.
Yeah, the more that you understand about your individual, I mean, I'm a big fan of this. I think in general, like I do blood work annually to a point where my doctors like sometimes give me a tiff about prescribing me the lab test because they're like, "Hey, you don't need to do this.
Yeah,
You're 35. Why are you doing this? You're not even at risk." And I said, "I don't care. Like I want to know. I want to
yeah,
know, you know, where does my individual blood panel come back? What am I sensitive to? And know that stuff so that I can make changes in my life now instead of trying to make changes when I'm in my 70s, which is what we saw, a lot of our parents' generation do. Is some of them hadn't even been to a hospital to do blood work until it's mandated by the
yeah,
doctor because they're seriously at risk for something that's life threatening. And I think when you actually start to paint the picture of, what does your individual blood panel look like? So how's your body operating on the inside? And then when you look at your blood, what foods are you sensitive to? This again individualizes that process. It's just like if someone comes to you and they go, "Hey, I want to get in better shape. Should I just do like back squats?" And you're like, I have no idea. I mean, we got to assess you. Like, let's see how you move. What's
yeah.
your
Well,
mobility, your
and what does better
flexibility?
shape mean to them, right? Like what
Yeah,
is it you want to have achieved here?
exactly.
Like what do you do?
Yeah, and that answer is gonna look a lot different for every person, and then the inputs are gonna be different because they might have zero exercise history. So no, you should not do any back squats at all. You should like learn how to sit up from a chair.
Yeah,
But if they have 15 years of competitive weightlifting, yeah, maybe we can talk about some more advanced ways to go about it. But making things unique to the person is so important. So when someone comes through and they do the blood work and they go in, let's say that they to a great degree stick to these confines of what foods they can and can't eat or should avoid and enjoy, and you get to the end of that, what happens after this test period? Can you go back to eating all the foods that you used to that made you feel like crap all the time? Or what's that reintroduction process like so that they can take what they've learned and implement it back into kind of their regular life?
yeah. So what we recommend is once you get your test results, avoid all of your reactive foods, ideally all of them, for 90 days. Now, with that being said, you may have a lot of so the scaling goes from 0, which is non-reactive, to +1, +2, +3, etc., to +4. So the +1 foods, they may be more borderline. Like maybe when we look at the raw data, it's like, right here on, the +1 side, right? Like just right there on the borderline. So I would say if you're having a hard time complying with avoiding all of the foods, because maybe you had 40 or 50 foods come up reactive, see if you can at least begin with the +2 and beyond foods, because those are, the much more stronger reactions.
Mhm.
After the 90 days, start slowly incorporating those foods back in. Ideally, have one of those +1 foods that you had removed, eat it for like a week, see if any of your issues come up, because now you're going to be a lot more tuned in to what you eat and how you feel. So, for
Yeah.
example, if it was migraines that was your issue, and let's say that eggs was one of your reactive foods, we could then start eating eggs, and now you realize, hey, I haven't had a migraine for 90 days. I'm feeling great. As you start eating the eggs, you'll quickly realize, wait a minute, I had migraines come back. Okay, let me continue avoiding the eggs for another 90 days. I'll try other
Mhm.
foods and see if I'm still having an issue with that. So that becomes an easy kind of reintroduction way. Of course, at 90 days can get retested. Otherwise, we recommend retesting every 6 months to a year. I think annual testing is plenty to allow someone just to have a good cadence of what's going on in their health. I mean, everyone should be doing annual blood work anyways. Just like you're saying, kind of the basic blood work of what's going on in your body. And once again, I think people sometimes want when they I feel like when they do a blood test, they like want something bad to be there, but don't forget it's much better for something bad not to be there, right? To just be
Yeah,
continuing
totally.
on the right path, but monitoring it like anything. I mean, it'd
Yeah,
almost be like going, about your life. Well, let's just say you're driving, right, and you just don't have a windshield, right, and you're just flying down the road. You don't have a windshield, but your car says you're going the proper speed limit. That's not a good way to go about it, right? You need the information. You need to see what's happening along the way so that you know that you're on the right path. So I think that everyone should be I, putting more of a focus on blood work. And it's not just me pitching my testing. I just think across the board 70%
yeah,
of a physician's diagnosis comes from laboratory tests, right? And even when you look at all these various diseases and issues that people can have, there's only so many symptoms. Like I find it
right.
fascinating when, I mean, I've got kids, right? So I'm always looking like, hey, my kid has this and that. Like, what could this be? And it could be a myriad of things, right? Because the
Yeah,
symptoms of children of a headache, nausea, diarrhea, fever, that could be 50 different diseases that are going on. So that's where the testing and obviously working with a healthcare professional can really help you. But so much of it is going to be in the testing. And I mean, knowing what I know now, I wish I could have gone back in time to when I was in my early 20s and have gotten a lot of blood work to just establish a baseline. Even
yeah,
with like say testosterone and all those other things, it would be great to just have that baseline. And then even thinking further back when I was in my peak health and working out a ton, I was like all jacked and stuff. I wish I did a DEXA scan at that point so that I would be like, oh man, like this is what the peak was. And then as time
yeah, yeah,
passes, I'd be like, whoa, I'm falling off the peak. I mean, of course you can just look in the mirror, weigh yourself, etc., and have a pretty good idea of what's going on. But the harder thing are those biochemistries of understanding like what your testosterone was, how everything's moving with your blood sugar. Because like anything, when you have one dot, you have a piece of information. When you have two dots, you start to have some assumptions of a trend. When you have three, now you have a trend. Now you know what's going on, right? Is something going up? Is something going down? When it's just two dots, it's hard to make a conclusion, right? You take your weight twice, you're like, is it going up or is it going down? It went from small to big, but what does that mean overall? Like, did I just have more
yeah.
salt? Am I holding water weight? What's really going on? So when you have more points of data, you can start really seeing what's going on, especially when you put that across time. And that's where the lab testing can help a lot.
Do you have a lot of clientele that repeatedly they've kind of been with you for 10 years kind of thing, and they're running tests repeatedly year after year and revisiting their biomarkers and their food sensitivities as they age?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We have actually had one client that was so uh, gung ho on having absolutely zero reactive foods, and I think they achieved it. I can't remember if they had zero, if it was like only a few. Because I
Wow.
remember it was kind of like a red flag in their lab. We're like, wait, this is unusual. What's up with this? And as we reached out to the physician, they're like, yeah, this client is like on like a mission to have zero inflammatory foods. We're like, wow, like tell us more about this guy. It's pretty fascinating guy. But yeah, I mean, we do. I mean, as far as our physician clients, we've had our physician clients, I think it's like 95% of them have been with us for over 10 years. And then
Wow.
they are regularly testing their patients and themselves. So we have a lot of people that will regularly get retested, usually on like I said, a 6 month to an annual basis. We actually have a large physician group, and all of their patients usually get tested about every 6 months. And I get it, because it's like, why guess with your health of what's going on? You
Right.
want to know what you should be doing, because once you start feeling better, the worst thing you could ever do is just lose it and then not know
Yeah.
why, not have an idea of what's happening. Like when you got tested, you were able to see, okay, here's how I can just keep on the proper trend. And you were doing it at a time that wasn't difficult. You weren't suffering with brain fog. You weren't having debilitating IBS where you had to go and run and find a bathroom every 30 minutes, right? So
Right.
that's kind of the best time to be improving your health. And I just I'm sure you see it as well as I, that so many people that maybe, well, maybe not so much when we went to high school because a lot of us were really healthy, but um just people that we know where like they may have not kept on the healthier course, and they were smoking and drinking and maybe even doing drugs. And now as we're getting closer towards 40s and 50s and whatnot, you see a lot of these individuals just it's starting to take a toll on them, and you can see it.
Yeah.
Even as you hang out with them, one, they could be more overweight. Two, they could just have way less energy. And three, maybe now they're having issues such as type 2 diabetes showing up. So it's something that you take your health for granted until you don't have it. And
Yeah.
I think the saying that I hear so often is you either pay now or you pay later. Paying now is you gotta be disciplined. You have to choose to cook your own meals. You have to go to the gym, right? You have to do these harder things. You have to potentially maybe take more of a financial uh, cost to getting the healthier foods and going to the gym and whatnot, right? And if you don't want to do it now, that's okay. You may have to do it later, and that's going to
Totally.
be maybe cancers and diabetes and chronic issues. I mean, I'm not going to say it's definitive, but it's just those things could come up when you ignore your health and you do things that largely is known to not be healthy. Like I think cigarettes is a pretty black and white one, right? Like if you're smoking a ton of
Yeah.
cigarettes, that's the first thing you should make an improvement on.
I know it's you really do. I mean, well, first of all, life's super unfair. Really
Yeah,
healthy people come down randomly with catastrophic illnesses, and there's loss of life that just is absolutely dumbfounding,
yeah,
confusing, and
comes out
doesn't
of
make any
nowhere too. I
sense.
mean, genetics plays a
But
role.
those
It's
are
crazy.
they are outliers. They are outliers. They really are. When you look at the total, they are outliers, and the non-outliers are failure to do pretty basic things like get in your exercise each week. There's national standards of 150 minutes recommended that you do that. It's doing things like cooking your own meals, controlling as best you can what goes into your food, trying to make smart choices around that. And yeah, there is an upfront cost. Organic food is more expensive than processed pesticide ridden food, but the reality is that the the cost of doing that now and the ability to live an active, fun, and free life up until those moments where you're destined to deal with something is a lot better than foregoing that and then having it be really bad when it's bad.
Yeah,
And in many cases, unfortunately, insurmountable. You can't get over that. It's when these people have been suffering with diabetes for 30 years, organic food might not be the thing that fixes that when you're 75, right? It's a completely different animal. So doing these small things for yourself now while you can, it's so valuable. And we live in a time where you can get pretty far ahead on your own regard. I mean, of course, having access to healthcare and things like that are a luxury and they're very helpful, but you can get blood work done at your doctor by request. You can get food sensitivity tests done by request and pay for them. You can do these things to actually find out as much as possible about you as an individual to then make smart choices around yourself and hedge your bets against aging and disease.
yeah,
Because it's just really sad. It really is this like I think about it all the time. 35 and this next decade, 35 to 45 is an intense decade. That's a lot of the chronic diseases set in, and it's really sad because that's also the decade where a lot of people create families.
yeah,
And so
absolutely.
it's potential to totally take the reins on your life and do the right things and to the best of your ability and make positive changes, but it's also a 10-year period, 15-year period where things can really fall apart without you knowing it. And you see it when, especially now, because you're so disconnected from people that you knew from when you were younger. And so when you do see them, that it's so stark. Either it's stark like, wow, you've really taken care of yourself, or it's stark like, oh my God, that person hasn't taken care of themselves at all.
Yeah,
Right. And maybe you don't say that, but like it's so stark because the last image you have was when you guys were 16 or something like that, when those differences really aren't showing up yet and everyone's active and running around doing stuff. So I can't stress enough how valuable this kind of stuff is to know about yourself. Even things like a DEXA scan, go do it. Just go do one and see where you're at. And if you don't know
yeah,
what a DEXA scan is, go look one up and then go do it because you'll be like, wow, this is a lot of really cool information that you can stack against yourself as you age. So it really is. I couldn't shout it louder from the rooftops that this stuff is valuable.
yeah. It's so easy to track ourselves nowadays. I mean, even the most absolutely basic thing like a scale. You can get a scale that can connect to Wi-Fi and start showing you trends over time. I know that there's can be things where mentally people have a hard time weighing themselves every day, but for me, I weigh myself every day because I fell off the wagon, right? I used to be extremely fit, working out all the time. I stopped doing that. I had kids. I just completely lost sight of it. And then I just realized like, hey, I need to make a change because I'm eating like I am a power lifter, but I am lifting nothing.
But not powerlifting.
Yeah, exactly.
That dude,
Yeah,
that's the worst
yeah,
combination.
yeah. Oh, I mean, I put on a bunch of weight, and then yeah, it's like now I realize, all right, got to take all that off. I mean, so far I've lost I think like 40 something pounds, and I'm continuing on that
Wow, dude.
process. I mean, it just takes time,
Yeah.
but you by having these metrics, you can start seeing. And if I would had paid more attention to how I was slowly slipping, right? I almost wish it would be like one week, and you're like, whoa, like I'm fat, and then you're like, it'd be
Totally.
more obvious, right? It'd be easier to deal with, but it's a very slow burn. And yeah, then
Totally.
you are like 6 years later, you're like, oh man, like what happened? So putting in place some of these metrics can be really beneficial, even if you aren't where you want to be. It
Mm.
can give you a really good baseline. And once again, with the weighing yourself, I do it every day, not to obsess about the number, but to be able to see the trend. Is the trend going up? Is the
Yeah.
trend going down? And the trend being over a month, how where is it going? Like, and then even from the day to day, I just have an idea of like, oh, okay, I was here, then I was there, then it's here, and then okay, it's bouncing and going down, right? That's what
Yeah.
I want it to do. That's where my goal needs it to be. And then even as I'm sure in training, a lot of the people listening, I mean, if you aren't tracking your workouts or writing down what you did or what you lifted, then you don't necessarily know if you're getting stronger or not. Because if you just go by feel, well, one day it feels really light, one day it might feel really heavy, but until you actually map it and write it down, you may go, wait a minute, I was lifting less on the day that it felt heavy. Like what happened
Right.
here? So it's just there's so many tools at our fingertips. Some of them expensive, some of them very inexpensive. Such as a scale and a notebook to journal of various things. And it can really change. It can change your life over time. I mean, we wildly overestimate what we can do in 1 year, and we dramatically underestimate what we can do in 5. And I just think that
For
that's the
sure.
perspective that people need to take is that long term. Life is long, right? If you're lucky, you're going to be on this planet for 80, 90 years. I think the average for a guy is I think about 75, 78 is their average lifespan in the US. So let's just round it, call it 80. You're lucky if you get to 90. I mean, just enjoy it. I mean, if most people on this podcast, let's say that they're in their 30s, I mean, you've got potentially 60 years, like 50, 60 years. I
Yeah.
mean, that's crazy. And I mean, all you have to do is just a few small things today and tomorrow and the next day. And next thing you know, there's just standards. They're just what you do. They're just who you are. And then you're going to completely change the trajectory of where you end up. You don't have to, do anything crazy, and you don't have to, do some wild stuff for 90 days or something. It's just start those small daily habits, compound one into the next, and yeah, you just completely change your life.
Well, that's one of the things that I think there's definitely some challenges with food sensitivity. One of them being in the event that you have a lot of restrictions, it even with few restrictions, it was tough. Like I had to change my lifestyle a little
Yeah,
bit, right? And I had to rethink. I had to think in the first place, which I that alone is difficult for sometimes people when you're in such a routine. Is okay, we're going to the grocery store, but there's like 10 things on here that we usually get. We can't get those this time.
yeah,
So what are we going to get in place of that? So you do have to have flexibility and a willingness to work with what your restrictions are. But the hard part is your this process doesn't end on Friday. It's not like a
mm,
job. You don't do your food sensitivities Monday through Friday and then on the weekends is whatever, right? And diets don't work that way either. I think that's one of the biggest reasons that they fail
yeah,
is that it's called a diet like it's this short-term thing that you do, but what you're really after is lifestyle change.
yes,
That's what you want the net result of a diet to be, is that you realize that going to McDonald's for lunch every day isn't that great of an idea. But you learn that by way of, you're trying the Mediterranean diet, so you're eating these other foods, and what they're really doing is just taking you away from McDonald's. and giving you something else to do. And that change alone is what becomes really effective. And so I think, for people listening that are considering doing a testing like this, like, give yourself some freedom. You're going to learn a lot just about what your habits are, but it's okay to make a mistake as long as you have the intention of getting back on that horse and moving forward. Because if you're given 15 sensitivities and you have a really good effort on 10 of them, and 5 of them are challenging and you execute most of the time, that's going to be a big difference. If you do that for 90 days, it's going to be a big difference. It's going to be a big change in how you consume food. And in the event that that brings no change to your body at all, now you have a really useful piece of data to go to a physician with, or to go to the next step of trying to resolve whatever the issue is. To say, hey, I even did this
Yeah.
hard for 90 days, and even that didn't adjust this. Help me. Where are we at? It gives you another really valuable point, an opportunity to learn about yourself, and then a data point on the end of that. And I don't know, you can speak to this. I mean, what is the success rate when you work with people and you can really track how effectively they stick to these? What kind of results are you seeing on the aggregate of this many years of doing business, this many people coming to you and doing their blood work and their food tests and finding these sensitivities and then enacting them? What are our expectations like for people?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've been doing this since 1978. So we're in our 46th year of, helping
Wow.
people.
Wow.
In that time, I believe we've helped over 500,000 people. We've conducted, I think it was like 51 million tests. And we've
Jeez.
worked with about, I think it was like 12,000 physicians across the world. 80, I think it's 80, can't remember if it's 81 or 88 countries, but over 80 countries. So
Okay.
we've had tremendous success. In that time, we've had 3 studies that were specifically done on our testing. One of them was related to irritable bowel syndrome, and we're able to have significant improvements in individuals that had IBS. So we not only reduced the IBS symptomatology that the individuals had, we were also able to improve their quality of life. So
Yeah.
that was kind of what I was saying earlier. We're like, yeah, if you achieve weight loss, but then you feel like crap, like, did you really win?
Right.
In that study, we were able to prove that to the point of compliance. I forget the exact numbers, but all of the 3 studies that we did, compliance was above 90% across the 90 days. So really
Gotcha.
high. And I think the reason for that is back to the carrot and the stick. When you're following the diet, it doesn't take long. It's usually like a day to maybe a week that you start feeling better. After
Mm.
that, if you do mess up, especially if you were having a specific chronic issue you're trying to improve upon, if you do mess up, that's when you get the stick, right? You get whipped and you're like, oh, the headache came back. And then you realize, all right, I got that headache because that's right, I had ketchup on that grass-fed burger, right? so, so
Damn
I
it.
think that's why compliance is so high, because it doesn't become this idea of, oh, I wonder if this is doing anything or if it's making a difference or whatever. You realize, okay, like when I follow this, I feel better. Certain parts of my life are improving. I'm enjoying things more, and bam, when I don't do it, well, now I don't feel well. Like I feel this or that come up. I know for myself, once I found out that I was highly reactive to brewer's yeast, and at the time I loved beer, which probably wasn't helping me with a weight gain, but or I guess
Yeah.
it was helping with weight gain, wasn't helping with weight
Yeah.
loss.
I was like,
Um,
that was helping
yeah,
you with
yeah,
weight gain
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
It was really good if you want to gain weight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found out like it didn't matter the volume of beer that I'd have, but like any beer, the next day all my joints would be super inflamed, and I just like would not like everything
Wow.
just felt stiff and bad. And I know for a lot of people, if they like drink a lot, then yeah, they're gonna have like that hungover, like dehydration feeling. But for me, it's like I had like a beer, I would get that feeling, that and like extremely bloated. So once I realized that connection, that's where I realized, it's not worth it. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's why compliance for our testing is so high, because it does change how you feel. It's not
Right.
like, I don't know, you're doing something to boost your immune system, and you didn't get a cold this year, so great, but it wasn't necessarily a night and day thing of like, I kept feeling consistently not good, and then I did this thing, and then I started feeling like way better. So I think that's where something helps a lot with our testing and people continuing it. The other two studies, one of them was on weight loss, and once again, we're able to help people lose weight on that critical area, which is right in their stomach. I think it was the what's it called, the hip to waist ratio. We're able to have
Yep,
a reduction in, which is the most scary fat, because that's like where your visceral
for sure.
fat and whatnot is. So that's the area that has the most impact in your health. So we're able to have a
It's all
great
around
reduction.
your organs.
Exactly. We're able to have a great reduction in that weight, as well as once again improving their quality of life. And these were measured by different things. The weight loss, well, that was simple. That was BMI and their weight, and then the quality of life was measured through something called the SF36. And the last study we
Love the
did.
SF36.
Oh, okay. You know that one?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no.
I was like,
But
wow.
it
I mean,
sounded
most
cool.
yeah, I was like most people
It
aren't really
sounded cool.
familiar with it. Yeah, it's like a self-reported thing where it's kind of like a scaling in a matrix of, I forget the questions, but like how are you feeling today? And there's a bunch of different questions, but it's 36 questions that the individual fill out, and as they do it over the 90 days, I can't remember if they did it weekly or daily, but they did it regularly, filling in how they're feeling, and then over the 90-day period of time, that's where we're able to see that improvement of they were actually feeling better, as well as these various markers for their certain symptomatology was improving for the irritable bowel syndrome, weight loss. And then the final study we did was with headaches and migraines. And we're able to have a great reduction in frequency and severity of someone's migraines and individuals that are suffering from chronic headaches. So those are three areas that
I
we
love
know
it.
we can have great improvement on. The other one that I know we have huge success in is skin related issues. So for those individuals out there that
Yeah.
suffer with acne or psoriasis or eczema, things of that nature, we can potentially have a great impact on that. Your skin is your largest organ, and it is an excreting organ. So if you are having an issue or you're not feeling well, a lot of times we'll have eruptions in our skin. If we eat really poorly, we'll have various things flaring up in our skin. So yeah, that will heavily be influenced by the food that you're eating.
That's another thing too with jujitsu because you have so much exposure
Yeah,
with your skin to bacteria because you're training on a mat that's shared by other people, and
yeah. Don't they
those
have that
people have
soap? I forgot
very
what that soap's called, where like it kind of gets the crap off
yeah.
you.
There's a lot of stuff that you can use like defense soap
Yeah,
and
that's what I've
wipes and
heard.
things like that. So all of us, I mean, most people have some little care routine that's between the jujitsu gym and home to the shower. But still, I mean, it's a lot of exposure to a lot of different stuff, and you want your skin and other you want all systems to be healthy and functioning and capable of battling bacteria and disease. But that was something I didn't really think about until after I started doing it, and I was like, oh well, there's an added benefit here too. Because imagine, I mean, you got a bunch of lesions and rashes all
Mm.
over your body, or maybe it's not that severe, but there's some or flare ups.
Yeah,
And then you go and you aggravate it in a mixture of like sweat, other people's bacteria, and whatever they're using to clean the mats of your gym, which, unless you have some very progressive gym owners, it's probably like bleach based stuff. So you're just rolling in that. I mean, that's not ideal either. So stuff like this, if you can reduce those kind of flare-ups, inflammations, eczema, psoriasis, things like that, that's also going to help your training. That's an overly specific example for jiu-jitsu, but I think that these kind of things matter. Like, eating is such a big part of our
yeah.
culture, just our existence, right? I mean, you have
Well,
to
I
do
mean,
it
it
to stay
largely
alive. It's like
is what
drinking water.
culture is. I mean, it's largely what certain
Yeah,
cultures are, right? Like, how do you define, one culture versus the other? I mean, it's their traditions, it's the
yeah,
things that they do, and so much of whatever that event is revolves around what they're eating, how they celebrate that. I mean,
totally.
especially if you think about American culture, I think all of our things revolve around food, right? 4th of July,
Yeah,
I mean, what comes to mind, right? Grilling, hot dogs, et cetera. Thanksgiving, turkey, right? Christmas, sweets and eggnog and stuff, right? Halloween, candy. So I mean, it's just all of our holidays are geared around food, and that's true of so many different cultures.
it's interesting with the I mean, we do not party, and definitely not anymore, but when we'll go out to date night, and usually get like a cocktail or two, and I'm probably more a whiskey person than anything else. And what was interesting is on my I'm going to pull it up so I don't butcher this, but on my food sensitivities test, so I keep this in my phone now. I made like a list so that
Nice.
whenever I'm out or whatever, I can just scroll through this. But um barley, So malt,
Yeah.
avoid malted barley, baking mixes, pancake mix, brewer's yeast, all alcohols except triple distilled vodka and silver tequila. And I was like, that's so interesting, because I would go, maybe have like a whiskey cocktail or something. And just that alone was like enough. The
Yeah.
next day you're like, ah, man, one cocktail, like, what's going on here?
That,
And then
so you know what I'm talking
I
about with the
made that
beer. Yeah, it's the same issue.
right. It's like, it doesn't matter if you have 3 beers or one, you're having the thing. So on a like micro level, you're having that thing that you're sensitive to. And so your body's having some sort of reaction. So when you know those things, it can I mean, imagine you're going traveling, right, in Europe. You're really excited on this trip, and the whole time you have IBS and you
Mm.
don't know why, and you're trying to enjoy all this fun food
Yeah.
and places and dinners. Well, now you could take something like this and go, okay, I'm extremely allergic or sensitive to this thing. I'm going to have that, but I'm going to be very specific about when I choose to have that, so that the rest of the trip or whatever is super enjoyable. And I think that on the total flip side of this, kind of full circle, that's kind of where I am at now, having done the at-home kit, sent it in, met with the nutritionist, learned all my foods, gone through 90 days of trying this. And I would not put myself at a 95% execution rate. I would put it lower, admittedly, probably around like 85%.
It's still
But
really high. It's good.
what I've walked away from this with is, in my phone, every time we go anywhere, is a list. It's a small list, but a meaningful list of things to try to avoid. And on days that I know I'm going into training, I'm very conscious before and after, like the day before and after that, of what I consume. And there's things that I know now when I have them, I know that they're going to cause an issue,
Yeah.
period. And so the choice it's not what's happening to me. Is what I'm about to have worth what I will feel later or not? And if it's not, then I don't have it. So it's a individualized system. I cannot find this list of things. I cannot have this awareness from something I found on Instagram. No one's going to send me a podcast about this list of things, because they're specific to me. And that's I think the X factor in all of this, because
Yeah.
it makes it work.
Yeah, I can give a couple recommendations of what people can do in general, though, even after we're just saying there's no general advice. But
Yeah.
especially I say for someone like yourself that already knows various inflammatory foods, things that you can do to kind of help with it is, I mean, the most obvious is if you find out you have an issue with milk or gluten or things like that. I know for sure milk. I think gluten, but I haven't experienced it myself. But I know for sure they have it for milk. Is that you can take an enzyme. So if you decide,
Mm.
you know what, I want to go all out and have some ice cream and Ben and Jerry's or whatever it is you want to do, you can then at least take that enzyme with that food to help make sure it gets broken down. I think they have one for
That's really
gluten as
smart.
well. Yeah, so that can help. Also, you could just in general take a dietary enzyme if you know you're going to be having something that may not be the best for you. And it's once again
Mm.
just going to potentially give you a bit of a boost. Like I
Yeah.
know for myself, beans are usually something that come up inflammatory to me. And a lot of people have an issue breaking down beans, hence why they have a product called Beano to help you, break that down. And yeah, so
Yeah.
like what I find, and my wife and I both like usually before a meal, especially when we're eating out, or I can't remember if it's before or after. I think ideally it's before or during the meal. You'll just take this enzyme and you just kind of chew it up. It doesn't really taste like anything, and then that seems to help me a lot with digesting, those certain foods, and and then feeling better later on. What I found for the alcohol side that can assist is after you having that one cocktail or whatever, you can potentially take charcoal pills, and that can kind of help um, contain some of those toxins and then expel out of you. So that's not a big deal. I don't recommend doing that regularly, right? But if you are to
Right.
like go out, maybe you're going to happy hour, you don't want to have to be too concerned about what you're going to have, or I don't know, you want to go all out and go to a whiskey tasting or something, then that could potentially be something that could help, is taking some charcoal pills afterwards, or you can even get this charcoal powder. I don't recommend the powder as much because it usually gets like everywhere, and then like everything just ends up being black.
Yes,
Yeah,
we have some of
yeah,
that. I know what you mean.
yeah, yeah. The
It's
fills are
just
a
like
little
all
bit
over the
easier.
countertop.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're talking about like digestive enzymes, right? I know like
Correct.
Seed makes one. There's probably a million different companies that make those,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
is
I
that what
mean,
you're talking about?
exactly. Yeah, you can just go to the
Okay.
pharmacy and there's like a plethora of different enzymes that are available. Digestive enzymes, yes. And then, but I was just saying, if you specifically know you have an issue to like if you don't have if you don't have lactase and you have an issue with lactose, because lactase is the thing that breaks it down. They have
Yep.
lactase enzymes that you can take. And like I said, I think for gluten they have one too. I'm not 100%, and I don't know how well that one works. But I know the milk one's very effective. But yeah, otherwise you can just get across the board a digestive enzyme, and then that can potentially help you when you're going to maybe have some of those inflammatory foods, or if you're going to be eating out, and you're not sure, or even if you just want to improve your health in general. Digestive enzymes at mealtime can help a lot. And then also just a really good probiotic. Just that's another
Yep.
good daily thing that you can take, is just a good probiotic. Other things that can be useful kind of across the board for people is drinking aloe vera, especially like first thing in the morning and just before bed. That can kind of help create a nice little soothing and healing for your gut. I don't remember exactly the expense of it, but I don't think it's too expensive, and you're only having a shot in the morning and night, so it's not crazy. It doesn't really. I'm trying to think what it tastes like. I don't know, maybe like a
It's kind of
bad
like
lemonade.
I feel like it tastes like gelatinous coconut milk kind of. It's like not. It's
Yeah,
almost tasteless.
it's not really a strong taste. I feel like it's a little sour. I feel like coconut
Yeah.
milk is like more enjoyable because it's like sweet, but the point is it's not crazy. I mean, you can
Right.
also have apple cider vinegar as well. I've heard that can sometimes help with digestion, but that is that's a really strong flavor. And if you are to have it like before a meal, it's kind of more challenging to be bringing that around. So
Yeah.
that's why I think the enzyme's a little bit easier
And
because
I
it's
mean,
usually a
look,
pill.
you're being very humble, like, but the big takeaway here is that these are like little things that you can do in addition
Yeah,
to making these smart changes. But doing the testing really is the X factor, because that's what shows you, David, or me, Abe, the actual things that we are sensitive to. Because
yeah,
you and I could go out to dinner at the same place and we could have two entirely different looking meals if we're adhering to these kind of changes.
yeah,
And that's an important thing, because most people, you eat like your peers, right? You do the things that your peers do. You go to the same restaurants together. You're very similar, and so it gives you the ability to cater whatever you're doing to you to the best of your ability. And honestly, I mean, it just, if you're someone who deals with indigestion, which could be, dude, it can be super annoying,
yeah,
right? Like, it can make social settings not fun. It can make training difficult. It can make things like flights uncomfortable.
mm,
Whatever it is, it can just make it a less enjoyable instance. So if you can have any semblance of control over that at a extremely low cost, like, that's huge.
yeah.
I think that's huge. I think that that's awesome. And if it's individual too, like, why not? you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess the way I think about it is all humans need three things to live. Just like bare minimum survival, right? First, you have to have oxygen. You can't. You can only go, I think, minutes without
No.
breathing, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to breathe. Second, you have to be able to drink water, right? You can go, I think, maybe a couple days without water, not long at all. After that, it's food. You can go. I mean, of course, depending on your body mass, you can go. I think a couple days or weeks without eating any food before you start having issues. Let's say at most maybe a month or so. I guess aside from the outlier guy who I think went like a year without eating, but those are the three things you have to have in order to just
What was I gonna
bare
do?
bare minimum survive, right? With
Yeah.
taking those into consideration, it's I would say it's essentially impossible to control the air you breathe, right? You don't choose when you're going to
Yeah.
breathe and where. I mean, maybe you could try to take around an oxygen tank, but I mean, I don't think anyone's going to do that, right? Most people don't even carry around the
Yeah.
water bottle, which I guess brings me to my second thing: controlling the water that you drink.
Right.
That's tough. I mean, I have to deal with city water. I have filters. I do what I can to control my water as best as I can. But at the end of the day, when I go to the restaurant, when I travel, when I just live my life, it's hard to fully control the water that I have and to even have full transparency of what's going on in my water. Of
Right.
those, three, the last one now is food. That one, of course, there's challenges in controlling what pesticides were used, how the food was grown. Is it GMO? Is it not GMO? But even taking those things that are essentially out of your control for the most part. But if you could simply just go, you know what? Instead of me reaching and grabbing this, because every time we eat, it's conscious. right? Food doesn't fly into our mouth. The oxygen flies into our mouth. Water's conscious, but there's not many choices we have there. But food, I mean, we are consciously taking that fork. We are putting into that food. We are bringing it to our mouth. We're chewing and swallowing, right? We're going to the grocery store. We're making that choice. We're sitting at the restaurant. The first thing you do is you have to order your food. You have to consciously choose what you're going to eat. So out of all three of those things, you just need to bare minimum survive. The only one that you can control is really the food that you eat. And that's where I think this testing can help so many people in not only knowing specifically what is inflammatory for them and what is not, but like you were saying, Abe, and I'd say the biggest thing that we give to people is that empowerment, is that
Yeah.
understanding that link between what I eat and how I feel. You don't have to be sitting there wondering what's going to happen to me, how am I going to end up performing my best. You'll be able to have those insights. You'll be able to know what's going on, and then that's something that can carry with you for the rest of your life. Even if you only get tested one time, you'll have a new appreciation, awareness for, let me think about what I'm eating and how I'm feeling. Let me start making a quick
Yeah.
journal of what I had today, and then how that resulting feeling is happening. Or now it's been a couple of years since I did the testing. These headaches are coming back. Why is that? What's going on? Is this something structural? Am I having a muscle or a joint or something is out of whack? Is it something biochemical? Is now the time has passed, am I having hormones going one way or another? Or is this
Right.
back to the food that I'm eating? Or is it the sleep? Is it the stress? Right? So at least you start having more and more awareness. And that for me is what I really hope everyone takes away, is just the empowerment that when it comes to your health, you are your best primary care physician. It's not to sidestep working with a medical professional. You absolutely need
Right.
to, but realize you are the champion for your health, right? If you go to your doctor and say, hey, I want to figure out what this thing is, just like you're saying, Abe, like, hey, I want to get this testing done. The doctor goes, well, I don't know if this is, something you really need to do. Abe, you're middle-aged, or maybe not middle-aged. I don't know what's considered middle-aged
Damn, bro,
anymore.
you just called me middle aged. I'm like, oh no, am I middle aged?
Yeah, I was like, what is middle age? I don't know. Let's see. If we die at let's say 80, then 40 is middle age. All right, so you're not middle aged,
Yeah.
but
So I'm young. I'm super young.
yeah. Abe, you're super young. You don't need to do this various testing. But the point is, like, you have to be that champion. You have to then maybe find another doctor or help convince this doctor that nothing crazy
For
is going to
sure.
happen for you doing this whatever testing it is you want to do, to find out what your biomarkers are. I mean, as I'm saying, hey, you guys should get this testing done. I'm a consumer myself. I'm going out. I'm getting all kinds of testing done to, if nothing else, to just get the insight, get that baseline of what's going on. And more than likely my results come back saying, hey, everything's spectacular, and everything's good. And I love that. I mean, that's the best news, because that means I don't have to change anything, and I just need to keep sticking to what I'm doing.
Totally.
But oftentimes we take that stuff for granted. Just like
Yeah.
I was saying in my own personal life, I took my fitness for granted. I thought that could go, I guess at the time I wasn't really thinking, but my actions said that I could go forever without having to work out again, which that's not true.
Right.
And then as time passed, I'm realizing, man, now to get back where I want to be, it takes that time, that time that I slacked off is going to take me probably at least that much time to get back to where I want to be. And that sucks, right? I don't like that is the fact of the matter. And that's where I hope everyone that's hearing this message is now's the time. Find out what's going on in your health and your fitness, whatever it is. I mean, more than likely, as we keep saying, the majority of these people are already super healthy and fit, but just don't lose it. Just stick with it. This
Yeah.
is your life. The I guess the final destination of your health journey is death, right? It's over. That's when it's
It's
over, is
true.
when you're
Yeah.
dead.
It's true.
Until then, it's just, there's always new information coming out. There's new insights. I mean, if we stuck with the information we knew back in the 20s or whenever they told us cigarettes were good for us, we'd still be smoking cigarettes and drinking Coca-Cola and, I don't know, doing heroin or cocaine or whatever was going on then, thinking everything was groovy. But you know times change. We
Yeah.
get better insights, and we keep adapting. And the more positive things you have going for you, then the more agile you'll be able to be, and the more kind of a buffer you'll have, realizing, oh, okay, I'm doing 90% right. I found out this 10% can be improved, and then you can go and improve it.
Yeah. And I think just getting as far away from like diet culture as possible. I
Yeah,
really advocate for that. I don't think that I think it's good to be curious and it's good
yeah,
to try things out. I was 100% vegan for like a year one time and like die hard for a year. There's there's value in experimenting with
Hmm.
different things, trying things out to see how you feel. But again, it's experimental. You don't know what you're doing. You're just trying something out and guessing.
Yeah.
When you have actual data based on the red stuff that's flowing through your body, now you have a pretty damn good starting point, right? So I think that there's definitely something here for anyone, and I say especially for people that are trained jujitsu, that are on the mats, that are trying to optimize their performance. If you're trying to optimize your performance and you're not optimizing your nutrition, you are missing out on, in my eyes, the second biggest contributor to performance, aside from obviously sleep, is how you're taking care of yourself and what you're putting in your body. So
Yeah.
we'll
100%.
link in the show notes, we'll put a place where they can get in contact with Immuno Labs if they want to. But I mean, even as you told me, they're not the only one in the industry. So Boone or David advocates for getting it done anyway.
Yeah.
And you told me that before I even went forward with it. And that was actually something I really appreciated. Is you're like, look, man, at the end of the day, I just want you to learn more about this. I'm stoked that you're going to do it with us. But even if it weren't, I just want you to, because there's value here. And that kind of transparency, it just made me feel really good. I didn't feel like I was getting, like schmoozed, but I'm also, we happen to be friends. So there's so many different avenues that people can go down. But I really liked personally the process of doing it with Immuno, because I thought it was very easy. There wasn't anything crazy that I had to do. And then the follow-up was super professional, working with the nutritionist and finding all this stuff out. It was timely. I got everything delivered to me, and I got to be able to start working right away. So I'm really, really stoked that we got to have this conversation finally, and that people are going to have an opportunity to link up with what you guys do. And like I said before, I mean, South Florida, the hub of mixed martial arts, it's probably the second most concentrated group outside of California and now maybe Austin, Texas, but
Oh, wow.
they're proximal to you. So I'm stoked. Thanks so much for coming on, David.
Yeah, it was absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Abe. And yeah, I hope everyone just realizes this is a long-term journey. And the good news is that we keep having more and more insights of what we can do to improve our health, and that's awesome. It's a wonderful time to be alive.
Hey, friends, Abe here. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and sticking around to the very end. If you want to support it, leave a 5-star review on Spotify or check out www.maynideapodcast.com. Join the mailing list and stay up to date on all things The Main Idea, from future guests, sponsorship opportunities, products that I'm using to help me perform at my best, invites to ask me anything, and any upcoming pertinent information to the show. I cannot do this show without you. It is literally why I show up each week and put these episodes together. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, from being part of the community. I hope you have a great day.